Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the fifth and final interactive webinar in the series, How to Build a Successful Allied Health Practice. Tonight's session is entitled The Efficient Practice, Home in Time for Dinner. And we're going to explore what an ideal week would look like when we keep the end point in mind, looking at methods to improve our productivity and efficiency to achieve that all-important work-life balance. I'm Sandy Vincent. I've recently joined the PHN and the education team, and I'll be facilitating tonight, but thankfully Charles Broadfoot is here tonight, just to make sure I don't press any of the wrong buttons. So thank you, Charles, for that. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we're meeting and working on. Today I'm in the Darkinjung land and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. As always, tonight's session is being recorded, so the recording and slides will be available for you in the education calendar in the next couple of days. During the session, please do keep your microphones on mute, but if you do have a question, you can either use the raise hand icon and we'll invite you to turn on your cameras and your microphone to ask your questions, or alternatively, you can use the chat box at any stage. And I'll read out those answers for you, those questions for you. To make the session more interactive, we're of course using polls through Slido throughout. We'd love you to participate in that. Your answers are anonymous, but we would recommend that you actually access Slido now in preparation to do that. You can either go to slido.com and enter the code for tonight, which is AH5, or you can scan the QR codes, which you'll see in Marcus's slides. We're also posting the Slido access in the chat. As always, the evaluations survey will be available on Slido. We'll launch that at the end of the session. Please do complete that if you would like to receive a certificate of attendance. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Marcus Crook, our presenter for tonight. Marcus has been a business coach since 2005, which was a natural progression from owning businesses and being employed across many different areas. Marcus has evolved his skills and accreditation in numerous coaching systems to successfully coach business owners in becoming leaders of high-performing teams. And we're very grateful to have Marcus back with us for this session. So thank you, Marcus. I'll hand over to you now.
Thank you, Sandy. It's lovely to be with everyone again. It's been an absolute pleasure to run this series for the Primary Health Network and for all the attendees, and hopefully people who are watching it on review later on. So just to get going with that, to make sure you know what's going on. If you do need anything from me, there will be some downloads. We'll talk about them because it's like, tell me what you want. I've got thousands of different things you can get, and if I'm able to give it to you, I'm very happy to do that. So you just email kcv@marcuscrowick.com and she'll give you anything. And if you want an appointment with me, really seriously, guys, it's okay to give me a chat and have a talk about what's going on in your practice, your organization. That's what I'm here to do, help people, empower people to live exceptional lives is my thing. So, if I can help you, please do. What we're here to do tonight, after the other series that we've gone through, we started off with the purposeful practice, so getting that clear future. So what's the future look like for you, and how do you combine that with your purpose? Then we moved through to the profitable practice. So starting to put together the way in which you make your practice profitable, and ultimately, because if it's not profitable, you can't keep going. You don't have to set out to make millions of dollars, but perfectly okay if you want to, totally up to you. But we've got to get that right, moving through the service practice. So looking at your purpose and combining it in the profit. There are lots of businesses, I assure you, are doing that. The standout practice, which was, we focused on the idea behind being unique in the marketplace, standing out from the crowd, turning your purpose into patients. And then tonight is the efficient practice, home in time for dinner. And today, so we've had some feedback from people, and what we're looking to do is do some more interaction with you tonight. So we really need you to do that. My chat's opened up and now I'm going to click on it. So I hope I don't disappear because I'm not good at Teams. yeah, we've got some interaction. So hopefully you've got the document printed out or on an iPad or whatever, the handout that was emailed out. You will need during this, you can sort of copy down because I've got copies of that coming up on screen. So we're going to do the super quick time study. We're going to look, you've got a target on there I refer to as the time target. We're going to look at what's the theory behind getting in the zone and what are the different tasks that you're doing and where do they fit. We're going to look at delegating, because the only way that you stop doing everything yourself is by delegating tasks out to other people. Ultimate person that people would know in that regard would be somebody like Richard Branson, who's literally involved in hundreds of companies, but spends a lot of his time on his island hosting guests coming there. We'll put together the ideal week, I refer to also as the default diary, and we'll explain that. So put together how should your week look in order for you to be efficient and get home in time for dinner. And there's some thinking that goes with all of that. And then ultimately, we're looking at some planning. We're not putting a plan together tonight. We're going to put some theory around that, so you can see that without the plan, none of the rest of this comes true. So that's where we are going tonight. Along the way tonight, when we get to the end, I also, I imagine because we've got an hour and a half tonight that we have some time for some questions to review anything that's come up during the series. Please, again, tonight, because we're making sure that there is workshop style, that you are going to be doing things, just stop us along the way and say, I've got a question, or this is what's happening in my practice or organisation. Can we talk about that? Everyone always says at workshops, the question you're asking, other people, they might have even thought about asking it, or they are asking it, but they're not asking it. They've got the question in their head, but they're not asking. And it's always more useful, I find, as much as I like to think that I'm a genius, it's always more useful when people ask questions and we can put the answers to them rather than just what I think it is that you need to know. So that's where we're going tonight. We start off with a quote from Richard Branson. So tonight, the efficient practice is about time. Richard Branson says, any successful entrepreneur knows that time is more valuable than money itself. We've got a certain amount of time on earth. We often say to people, about the number of weeks that we have on earth. I think it's 8,000 weeks, is it, that we have on earth? Something like that, 4,000. Where are you up to? So I know in my life that I very much doubt that I've got more weeks to go than I've used up. So time is very precious. I can't get it back. Doesn't matter how much money I make, I cannot get it back. I've got to have that time. And Jim Rohn, the famous late Jim Rohn, said time is more value than money. You can get more money, but you cannot get more time. And that's really, really important. And it comes back to your whole purpose. Everything that we're doing in this series is tied back to your purpose. What's your purpose? There's the organizational purpose and there's your personal purpose as well, which is what we talked about in the first series. I'm a great believer that it's got to fit with the first part is what's your personal goal? What are you driving for personally? And again, we talk business, that could be money, but it's, time with the family. I've been watching a lot of YouTube. I'm a bit over TV shows, and on YouTube, I'm in particular watching a retired couple who have sold their home and they're in a big fifth wheel RV. So it's in America. We don't get them very much here. So the big trail behind things like 40 something feet long, and they've got a semi-trailer prime mover is what they tow it with, but they're spending their life, now that they've retired, traveling around. Another family from Maine, and they're not quite, I think they're just about to turn 40, and with their two teenage girls, they've got a caravan that's about 40 foot long and traveling around the world, because that's her father ended up dying of ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and never did what he wanted with his life. Never. He was always talking about someday, someday. So they call their YouTube channel and their Instagram or whatever, Finding Our Someday. They decided, we're going to take off and make that now. Make that happen for us now, because that time you can't get back. You can make all the money in your world, but you cannot buy a minute back of your life. So really, really important. What's the purpose of your life? What's the purpose of your organization? And we want to make that as suitable as possible. And the time, we need the time to do it. We've got to make sure it fits in everywhere. Where we fit, I keep referring back to this 6 steps to massive results, 6 steps to a better business, whatever you want to call it. Up the top of this, results is where you're making the money that you want to make, you're working the hours that you want to work, you have the time and money to hopefully do what you want to do. That can be go on holidays, carry out investments, expand your business, or whatever. At the moment, what we've done is work in the bottom levels mainly. So mastery down there is destination mastery. So that was our first session. What's the purpose and where are you going? We're looking at money mastery or numbers mastery. Do you run a profitable business? In there as part of that is what we call delivery and distribution, or distribution or delivery mastery. And that's basic customer service, which we'll sort of touch on tonight. And then the other part of that's time mastery, because it is, as it says on the right-hand side, moving from chaos to control is what we're working to do. The next one, niche, predictable cash flow, that's when we were looking at how do you stand out from the crowd, because that's all about marketing and sales and using that proven formula to link everything up to make sure that you've got a profitable business and you're not having to do crazy things in marketing. You know where you're headed, how you stand out, and you get customers, your patients coming back to you time and time again and choosing you because of the work you do. So that's where we fit. But tonight, what I need you to do now is pull out this. And again, I'd love you to come off mic and talk to me about all of these things. This is going to take a few minutes to fill in, probably 3 to 5 minutes to fill in. Now, the tricky thing for me is with people on the webinar, particularly with cameras off, I've got no idea when you've finished this. You're not sitting in a room like we used to do. So I don't know when you're finished. So you've got to yell out to me, because I'm going to say, well, I'll give you 5 minutes. I'm just going to be quiet for 5 minutes and give you that time to fill it in. What we're asking you to do, pretty simple. Fill in the chart below to estimate how much time you spend each day of the typical working week in your business. So really, you might be able to do this in a minute. So on a Monday, how much time do you spend working in your business? And that would be, you might start at 8 o'clock in the morning seeing patients and finish at 6 at night, but you're doing things till 8. So you've had a 12-hour day. So it's that simple what we're working with in this. How many hours per day are you spend working in or on your business? So probably get that done in 60 seconds. I'll start my timer and we can see how we go. So halfway through, it's just an estimate, doesn't have to be exact, but are you spending 8 hours on a Monday, 10 hours, 12 hours, 2 hours? Just write down those hours and then total them up down the bottom. Already done, Vanessa? You're our key because I can see you. Okay, cool, well that works out. 3 seconds to go. Vanessa, can I ask you, because we're going to put this up as the next thing, can I ask you, if you don't mind sharing, how many hours you put down?
56 was a guesstimate, Martin.
Cool.
Months, sorry.
No, thank you. So I'm used to being called lots of things, so that's fine. So we've got the first Slido up. This will give us a bit of a poll. If you can go to Slido, and I'll log on there as well. I had it up before to test it, so hopefully it's working. And you'll see it's a multiple choice, just to pick one. Obviously, technically, if it says if you're working 56, you're above 20, but hopefully you understand What that means, I'm going to put in 30, so I'm in the middle to not affect anything that's going on too much. Okay, so yeah, so we're actually ending up so far with 63% working more than 40 hours a week. That's not unusual in any business. Oh, it's changed, 55%. Oh, so we've got everyone working more than 40 hours a week. And so it's roughly split between people doing 40 to 50 hours, I would say. What have we got? No, a third, 30 plus. So I'm wondering if you're working 30 plus, is that because are you working part-time, or you are just already really efficient in your business and don't need to be there, or are you an employee? And I'd love to hear from people about that, or just stick it in the chat would be great. So yeah, we've still got what's that, 66%. So 2/3 of the people, should have worked that out more easily. 2/3 of the people working over 40 hours, a few working over 50 hours. I typically find that for a business owner, working 50 plus hours is not unusual at all. And you know, as you're smaller, because you tend to be doing the work and then doing the admin and management, that's, you know, perfectly normal. And then it becomes a matter of, are you happy with that, or do you want to change it? Do you want to, you know, work less hours? That can be difficult, obviously, if you're not expanding, if you're not putting people on to take workload off you. And often the people we delegate to first in that are so people like bookkeepers, to keep the compliance part of the books in the business. So here's the next part that I want you to do. This might take a little bit longer. So on your booklet, I think there might be 41 we fitted on the page. So that's really, if you go through the day, it's working out what are all the different things you do. Now, key to this, if you imagine one of your days of the week, and maybe you have different days where you do different things. That's what we'll be getting to later on. So if you start the day, I want you to not only think about the big things you do, that you might be seeing patients, and you're going to say, so one of my tasks is to see patients. One of my tasks is to reconcile my books, if you're doing that for yourself. But there's also just activities that you carry out for a day, as well as just tasks. So they're things like check my email. A lot of my clients have just had one tonight, and we'll talk about that later on, what he's done with his email. Please remind me about that. But also getting coffee. I've got a coffee. You know, how many coffees do you get a day? Write down that item, because that's really important. So I'll stop talking and give you, I'll just check in at 3 minutes and see how we're going. But I want you to write down everything that you can possibly think of, and that's me for 3 minutes. Ask a question or put something in the chat if you want something. Sending you a message, Rachel. It's 3 minutes. We'll give it a couple more minutes, unless you're done. Let's go for another minute and see where you're up to. Just write down any last activities you can think about. Okay, we're going to keep working, but I'm going to show you the next slide and give you the instruction that goes with it. So from that tasks, what we want to do is to look at some categories. So as it says on here, fill in the chart below with 5 to 10 task categories you do on a weekly basis. So if you've broken it down a lot, so for instance, if you're in your accounting software, you might be reconciling payments, sending out invoices, doing different things that you've put down, but a category there would be bookkeeping as it puts down there. So, you know, emails could be one part. I wouldn't wrap up communication into a big list. Like I wouldn't put actually, as it says there, mail, phone, email. Nowadays, I would break that down because I think, you know, the email and phone can take up such different, they're quite distinct things, and we can have quite distinct approaches to dealing with them. So if you go through your task list, you know, there might be things there that you like getting coffee, going to the toilet, might be just under, you know, personal time, if that's one of your top 10. What we're trying to do is look at that. Again, I imagine if you're a practicing health professional in your organization, then, you know, 80% of your time probably says carry out patient appointments, you know, look after patients, something like that. And that's fine. So how many hours is that taking you for the week? And what we're trying to do is, if you've got 50 hours down that you believe you work from that previous one, we're just trying to balance this out to see, is it actually 50 hours? We're not going to get exact, that's fine. We're just getting an idea of how long each task takes. And, you know, but if you've got down that you work 30 hours a week and you put down, went on these categories, you add it up and you get to 60, there's obviously something wrong. We've got to get that a bit closer, have a bit more of a think about it. Already done, Vanessa? You're my guide, Vanessa. No one else is brave enough to be on video, so you're my guide. I can see whether you're actually finished or not. So if we've got that done, down the bottom there, you've got choose the 1 or 2 task categories that can be delegated. Now we use this in workshops where we're actually working on it. We can look at that later on when we come to some of the other part. So just wondering from what everyone's got down, if you can put it in the chat, are you happy with the number of hours you're working each week? So that's really important, because the whole point of this webinar is about getting you home, making sure that you're not working too hard. So if everyone's happy, we can go home now. So little chat question, yes or no, are you happy with the number of hours you're working this week? And the other thing I'd like to know, well, let's just get that one first. No. Yes, Emma, thank you. That's cool. Well, hopefully we can make it even more efficient and stress-free for you, Emma. No, thanks, Vanessa. Who got the most number of tasks? Nicola, yeah, that's fantastic. It's lovely when people are happy with their hours, getting home. I don't talk about work-life balance, I talk about life. And because work comes into that, it's part of life. So how do we balance? And balance doesn't mean that everything is equal in terms of number of hours. It's balanced because I spend 40 hours at work and 40 hours at home and 40 hours of sleeping. It means it makes sense for you. You feel good about what you're doing. Balance for people like Bill Gates would have been working for days and days at a time, totally focused on, like many computer programmers, on what he's doing. So who got the most number of tasks? Just type in for me, how many tasks did you actually get written down before? I'd really like to know. I bet it's more than 3. What have we got? Did anyone fill up the page with 41, go over the page, come up with another 70? There's lots and lots of different things we do. Lani, happy, that's great. 6 tasks. We need to find you more things to do we, Lani? 6, wow. That's awesome. Wonder, is that because you delegate? 23, Emma? Yeah. Yeah, ran out of time, okay. It's a good thing to go away and think about. Like when we do time studies, one of the downloads you can get for me, the reason that we don't send it out is like, I just don't like giving people lots of documents that they're not going to use. But I do have what's called 9 steps to an ideal week that goes on top of this. You're welcome to have that, and it's just a matter of emailing Casey, as I said, and she'll send that out to you. So you can get that at the end if you want to go through this, and we'll talk about how some of that comes out. So 25, okay, 25. Vanessa, you win at the moment. Lani, you're doing really well. 6 tasks. So again, I wonder, is that because you've already delegated things or because of your role in the organization? That's actually very few compared to most people that I would come across. So fantastic there. Okay. So if you've got those balanced up, is there what we call a BFO, a blinding flash of the obvious? And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I ran this probably 15 years ago at a breakfast meeting that I ran on the Central Coast, and the bookkeeper in there did this, and she was amazed when she actually worked out how much time she spent on emails for the week. I mean, you'd think she'd be on accounting software all week long, but there were so many client inquiries coming in. It was her, and she later employed her husband. So, a small bookkeeping practice. She was just blown away by how much time she was spending looking at and responding to emails during the week. So it highlighted that was an area that something needed to happen with. And she couldn't delegate because she didn't, and she still, all these years later, doesn't have any other employees in the business, but she had to do something about it. I'll give you a key to that. And please, as we go along, if there's a particular area of your business where we can look at some answers, please let me know. It doesn't mean that I've got the answer, but maybe somebody here does, and coaching is really about helping you clarify. So let's have a look at some of the theory that goes behind this. Now, some of you might have heard of Stephen Covey and his 7 habits of highly effective people. Now, that is, I always say to people, in my top 10 books, there's about 100, but 7 habits of highly effective people is definitely in the top 10. It's not just a book for business, it's a book for life, you know, what you have to do in your life. And he has his quadrants of urgent, not important. This is arranged a little bit differently. One, because it comes from Action Coach, and so that avoids a bit of copyright with Stephen Covey, and 2, because it helps make some sense. So if you have a look at your tasks there, you know, who has down that they're looking at Facebook, just for the sake of looking at Facebook as you go through the day. Lots of people, if they're sitting at their desk, and we have browser windows open a lot of the time because things are online. Sorry, somebody's gone and coming back. So they, you know, you click to it, or you check your phone, or the notifications are on your phone. So, you know, personally, I have very few apps compared to most people on my phone. And I do have things like Facebook on there, and at night I sit there and check them, as well as watch YouTube or whatever. So distraction. So let's just check in on these words up the top, because they're really, really important. And I, again, highly advise reading 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, however you choose to say it. Urgent and important are the words that come up. So what's urgent? Now, we understand that as something that has to be done now. So there's a time frame around it that has to take place. Often we find when time frames are put in place, it's because of someone else. You know, you have to go and see a patient for an appointment. If you think of it, that's because the patient's there to see, so you're doing it for someone else. And important, I like to define as it's something that moves the business forward. It's helpful in the process of moving the business forward. So we can keep those in mind. So what are the things that are just distracting you? They don't have to be done now, and they're not actually moving the business forward. Have a look at your task list, and the reason your document is left blank is so that you can not only fill these bits in, but you can write down some of those things there. One of the theories that comes up with time, with money, I find with everything that we do, if we have a look at how do we make it better, as I said, I was sitting down with this GP today talking to him about, it was about business, but explaining to him about coaching and using GPs as a way of explaining that the methodology of health is very much like the methodology of coaching. But I said, you know, if you were telling me to get fit, what you'd first tell me to do is to, sort of stop eating, slow down eating. So you're telling me what to cut out a lot of the time first. If you're talking about how to improve the profitability of the business, a lot of the time what we do is say, well, what do you need to stop? Home finances, what do you stop? So I've just cut out Disney Plus and something else from home, 2 streaming services that we weren't using. Because if there's something we want to watch, I'm a binge watcher of things. I hate watching episode by episode like I had to when I was growing up. It's like, no, give me all 8 seasons now, please. Let me just watch the one show so my mind can keep track of it. So, you know, it's stop. So what do you stop in your personal finances? What do you stop in what's using your time? And that's the distraction thing. Not to say that there's not a place for distraction. I'm very keen on that. As we come later on, we'll talk about that, what you put in there first. So what are the tasks that distract you? The next part in there is then this. It's urgent. Sorry, got to get it up. Urgent. So it's got to be done now, but it's not important. So again, typically it might be for someone else, but is it really moving the business forward? So you're deluding yourself into what's taking place in the business. Now that can be, if I'll bring the other one up now, urgent and important. So it's got to be done now. Often it's for someone else, but it's also important to move the business forward. You're in demand. What can happen, you can talk about, what goes on in each one. You make your own, looking at your own list of tasks to put them in there. I've seen people with 2 phones, like 2 business phones, and they've got people, if you think of tradies, I'm thinking of one particular guy, and his workers would be ringing him all the time. So he was busy being busy. He was busily in demand because he hadn't delegated properly. He hadn't empowered them to make decisions in the business. So he was busily being busy. He was very urgent. The stuff had to get done, and it was important for the business that it got done for him to be in demand. But in a way, he was deluding himself about his importance, because other people can do it. Even if they can't do it as well as you, they can do it. And it's we talk about progress, not perfection. Obviously, you want the practitioner in your organization to carry out their role well. But maybe they're not as good as you. But do they do the job well enough that it's okay to delegate to them? So where do you fit in this? Where are these tasks fitting? Now, again, if you're working in the practice, the carrying out your role as a health professional, or if it's as a practice manager, you're spending most of your time doing things probably that have to be done now and are important for the business. If you're a physio and you're attending to somebody, you've got to see the patient now because they're booked in for the appointment. So that's urgent. There's a time frame on it. You can't just put them off forever. You've got to see them. So 80% of your time is probably spent being in demand, and that's perfectly okay. And it's important that it gets done. But then the next part of this is that it's not urgent but important. So not urgent. Think of BAS that comes up all the time. It becomes urgent because, and it shouldn't be that bad nowadays, because we're using accounting software that keeps us up to date. We have bank feeds coming into accounting software that should be being kept up to date on a regular basis. So if they're being done once a month, so I don't believe in that in looking at businesses nowadays when we have the ability to look at it. Jerry Harvey once said about his chain, because, and this was like 10 years ago, because of the way software was then, even then, that he would look at figures every day because they were up to date. That's what you need to know. So that your books should be up to date. I'm sure there's lots of things in there where we can keep them up to date. But what are the things that are not urgent but important, but put us in the zone? And this is, I did this today on social media. You can follow me on social media. Oh, what happened then? That's me touching things on the screen. Sorry, guys. If I go to the next one and then come back, that might make it easier. Nope. I did a thing today. I don't know if you can see that there. It's not really that important. It says CEO thinking. So the CEO, the next part of that is CEOs imagine the future, and they imagine the future out there in the future, not tomorrow, not next week. It's like what's happening in, well, like I talked about Action Coach, we've talked about the purpose and vision before. World abundance is the vision. Well, world abundance is not going to happen in the lives of any coach that is within that organization at the moment. That's way out there in the future. But you might be imagining 5 years in the future and thinking, what is my practice, my organization, my business, my life going to look like? That's what a CEO imagines out there. And then they work on the strategy. So how am I going to get there? So is it, if you're in a practice, is it by doing more and more work yourself? Is it by growing and having more people in the one location? Is it by expanding the number of locations? That's strategy, thinking about how do I get to that place in the future? Is it by reducing the number of patients you see, but you necessarily have to, might necessarily have to charge a higher price? So that stuff, it doesn't have to be done today, but it's important to stop and think. Keith Cunningham, who is the guy reputed to be behind Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the Rich Dad thinking, it's not all about money, but Keith wrote a book, and I'll try and think of the name of it, And he, you know, all of those people, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates famously takes, is it a week, a year, where he just goes and reads everything he can. Warren Buffett, reading and thinking is the time. Last week, I had my planning day for clients where we get together, and because it's the financial year, we're looking at what's the next 12 months look like as part of the vision further out. What's the 12 months look like? And then wind that back to what has to happen in the next 3 months. So that's not urgent. Did it have to be done then? No, business could keep carrying on without it. But that thinking time, being in the zone, it's important so that we do get there eventually. That's the time that we have to get. So have a look at, you know, do you have that time in your week? And it's one of those things. It's a bit like saving for a house. You know, if you're not saving the deposit now, when do you start? The imagining the future is that I've got the house and I know I've got to save a deposit. So when do I start putting that plan into action to get there and thinking about how you make that happen? That's CEO type thinking, which is what you really need to get there. So here's the question for you. We mentioned this before, nothing wrong with it. What percentage of your time is spent in demand? In again, if you're a physio in your practice, you know, being the physiotherapist, or I'll let you get that up. You know, we had down there doing things that are urgent and important. So there's a time frame on them, and they are moving the business forward. If you're a practice manager, it's being the practice manager, doing the main role of that. What is the main role considered to be of the practice manager? If you're an electrician, I'd say, so, you know, doing the electrical work is the demand type work, but doing the bookkeeping is a demand type work a lot of the time as well. So I'm a lot like you guys. Okay, here we go. What percentage of your time? So not hours, it's asking you percentage of your time do you spend actually doing the demand type work. So I'm going to put in 40 again, so I'm in the middle and hopefully don't. I do that so I can see the stats, people, guys, that otherwise I can't see them. So half the people, about 40% of the time, doing the in-demand work. That's interesting. A third of the people, 80%. Yeah. So that what we expect to see is that will change as time goes on, as the business grows, the organization grows. So if you're like me, I've got a couple of people that assist me, but I'm the one responsible for coaching. A bit like, you know, if you're the health professional in your practice, you might be responsible for carrying out a lot of the actual patient care work. That's what I do with my clients. So that takes my time, and I get people to do the other things though. So that's, yeah, interesting. In small business, again, I would expect for most businesses turning over under $250,000, that the business owner would be 80% of their time would be actually doing the job that they have, carrying out their profession, and then the rest of the time is doing all that admin management. And then that will change on the way through depending on how specialized you are. So for instance, my brother was an anaesthetist. He's retired. Well, you know, 98% of his time would be doing the in-demand, because he's got to be in an operating theatre putting people to sleep. But as a highly specialized person, then you have other people do all of that work. Okay. Different to a Richard Branson scenario of, well, I have other people doing everything and I oversee it as a true CEO. So like my brother, it's not a CEO. He's not really running an organization. It's just people coming to him. So don't forget, you can ask questions. Time to delegate. So this is an interesting one. Again, we're in your workbook, and this is taking what you've got there and putting some tasks against it. And I want you to also think of it in this way. So Often if it's high skill, you can't get somebody else to do it. If you have a look at your task list, you know, what's the high skill work, you might have to still carry that out, but it's low fun. So we're trying to get that where that fits. And the other thing that I'd like to do there is put some monetary values to this, particularly the skill work. If you start down with low skill, so what's that paying? So if you were an employed person on the minimum wage nowadays, what are you going to be getting? Say, is it, you know, like, let's call it $25 an hour. That's a $25 an hour role. Medium skill, you know, what's that? Is that a 30, 35? Up to you what the price you put in there. And then the high skill is probably when you're carrying out your actual profession. So if I don't know, what does a physio bill out? I mean, massage therapist bills out at $75 an hour now. Certainly if you're in trades, if you're not, you know, you've got to be billing out $100 an hour to be breaking even at the moment. So you might have in that top set, that top row for skill, maybe, you know, if we call that $100 an hour, the bottom one's $30 an hour, and the middle one is, say, $60 an hour. But you can make that up for yourself, depending on your profession, where you fit. Because we not only want to put in the high skill and low skill, and then is it fun or not? So if you have a look at some of your tasks and you work out, well, where am I going to put this? We also want to consider how much would I be paying somebody else to do that job. So I'm not sure if I'm making sense with how to put this together. Sandy, does that make sense to you? Yeah. Vanessa, does that make sense to you, what I'm asking you to do?
Are you asking us to put a dollar amount in there or write down what we think?
No. So what I'm asking you to do is write down from your task list. I want you to go to this and say, that's a high skill task and it's a lot of fun. So that would go into the top right hand. It's not a quadrant, obviously, whatever you call a non-O-cube. I don't know what the correct term is there. So that would go in the top right. If it's a low skill task and low fun, it would go in the bottom left. Then what I'm asking you to do is also, in considering the skill level, is it a so sorry, Vanessa, what's your business? What sort of healthcare?
Adult speech pathology.
Okay, so can I talk to you a little bit about the pricing?
Sure.
In that?
The pricing?
Well, because what I'm trying to get at, so the high skill for you would be carrying out the speech pathology. Would that be correct?
Yeah, correct. I hope so. Yeah.
So, well, I know I can't go and do it, so I'm sure it's pretty skillful. So do you charge by the hour, by the appointment? How does that rate work?
Yeah, well, appointment an hour, it's the same thing pretty much, yeah.
Okay. So if you don't mind sharing, what would be a typical price for an appointment then, a fee?
Well, NDIS, it's $193.99.
Okay.
And for a private client, it's $185.
Okay. So on that, in that top row underneath high, we might put down there $190. So if we bring it back to hourly rates, that the skill level required there is $190. But then some of the other tasks in the organisation, so what would you consider to be a task that, that it might be the lowest paid person in your organisation? So, I mean, it could be, do you take the bins out?
I don't have bins.
You don't have bins? Where's the rubbish go? Well, so when I had my tuition business, I took the bins out. You know, we charged out the skill level.
I wash up the client's glasses.
Well, there you go. So that might be a low skill level job, and it would be if you were paying someone to do that, you know, what would that cost? So that bottom row might be $25 an hour, say. And it's not, our numbers don't have to be exact. It's just to show us that there's a point that comes from that. And then the middle tier level of skill, maybe that's bookkeeping or, you know, some other administration job where you're paying somebody at a higher rate, and depending on whether they're an employee or an outsourced person. So you know, an employed bookkeeper might be there at $35 an hour, where an outsourced, my watch is talking to me, but whereas an outsourced bookkeeper, I would expect to be somewhere between $70 and $100 an hour, roughly. So that would just give you the, when you're putting these in, and I know I'm taking a long time to talk through this, when you're putting the tasks in there at the moment, to give you an idea of what they're worth, and then we'll talk about that, make a point about that. Okay. So again, folks, hopefully everyone else has, whilst I've been using up Vanessa's time, has been able to put some of those in. But if we can take a couple of minutes to have a look at that, and then we'll have a talk about it. How'd we go? Got some down? Anything strike you? I'm going to keep picking on you, Vanessa. I really thank you for being, having your video on and talking to me. People said to us, we'd really like it to be more interactive, but we need interaction for that to take place. So I really appreciate it.
I would hate to be looking to a lot of blank screens. Yep.
Yeah.
Don't get it.
Was there anything that stood out for you in doing that?
There's a lot of low skill, low fun things that I luckily don't do.
Okay. Oh, so this is more about what you do, because the next question's about delegation. So you've got people doing those for you?
Yes.
Can you give me a couple of examples of those?
Just booking up the diary.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So what typically happens again is things like bookkeeping, sending invoices, reconciling, you know, in accounting, checking if there's money in the bank, paying bills. Paying bills is one that you have to keep control of, because I promise you, the people who get where embezzlement takes place, it can only happen when somebody has control of the bank accounts and the bills. So you do need to keep control of that. But like I said before, if it's, you know, taking out a bin, just a waste paper basket and emptying it, and the point isn't not to do it. The point here is, if you can earn $180, $190 an hour, and you're doing $25 tasks, does it make sense? And it's not. I always say to people, like, if you're depending on the size of your practice, if you need to be doing things at 2 a.m. because you can't afford it at the moment, I totally get that. You know, we've been there. But there's that point where, can I be doing something else that makes more money than that? And that's what you've got to look at. Even when it comes to carrying out those roles, how do you move forward? And this is about making decisions. If you employed somebody to carry out that role, obviously they're not going to be paid the $190 an hour. You couldn't afford to do that because you've got to pay all the expenses that come for the business as well. And I'll go back to tradies because everyone understands them and it's quite clear. If a lot of tradies in their business will go and do the work on the way home or that bit of after hours work, whatever, to save on the cost of sending somebody, because they'll go, but I'm making, I'm now making $150 for an hour. And what they haven't thought is, but you're only paying, if you were to send one of your team out to do that, maybe you're paying them $50 an hour with a bit of overtime in place. So the business is making $100 an hour. If you send them, the business is making $100 an hour still, and you're home. If you go and do it, the reality is that you're making an extra $50. That's the mistake they make. They think they're making an extra $150 and go, no, you're charging $150. You're paying somebody else $50. The business still makes $100. So when you do it, you're now putting $50 less tax, etc., into your pocket. So is it worth it for you to go and do it or just send someone else? And that's as you build the business. Is it worth it for you to keep doing it? And the more specialized roles, that's what happens. Specialists, it's harder to get somebody to carry out adult speech pathology. So maybe that's you, and that's like me, specialized role. Lots of people pretend to do it, but there's something more to it. So that's the point we want to make there. The question that comes up, here's our next Slido, is this: what will you delegate? So I'd really like you to answer. This is a word cloud question. So you just type in a word about, well, what will you delegate, so we can see what people want to delegate in there. And what am I going to put in there so it really stands out? It's me and not yours. I've put lead generation in there. So you'll know that's me and not other health professionals. Sending faxes. Faxes? The medical profession is one of those, the health industry, one of those things that still uses faxes. It's like, what's that? I'm old enough to remember the first faxes, paying over $3,000 for a thermal printer fax. Monitoring emails. Yeah, so I do that as well. My assistant has access to my emails, so she doesn't look at them all the time, but at times I'll say, can you jump on and send this to somebody or check whether that's come in? Lots of CEOs, the executive assistant will be the person who actually looks at the emails and then just sends them the stuff that they have to take care of. Monitoring emails, yeah. Well, emails is one of the big things. Payments and bookings, yeah. And that's part of this getting home is, payments and bookings is the automation that you can carry out nowadays, bearing in mind the sort of, if I can call it customer service, the service to your patients, looking after them. You've got to bear that in mind. But yeah, really important. Cleaning, I mean, that's again, in my tuition business, I used to do that because it was just a quick vacuum around. But if you want a good cleaner to come in, and they're not, the good cleaners are going to charge a decent amount of money to come in. If you need somebody around Newcastle, let me know. Work with a couple of them, do commercial cleaning. But they charge the money to make sure that the job's done properly for you. It's really important. So good stuff. Creating resources, yeah, that's a big one now. A lot of people use, depending on what you mean by resources, but marketing collateral, all sorts of things on there. Yeah, laundry's a big one as well. Okay, so here's some tips for doing that stuff. If you want to find out, so some of this is in my 9 steps to an ideal week, which is what we're coming up to show you how to do it. You can get everyone to do it as well. I got you to list out your tasks and activities, but you can start by spending a week or two doing a basic time log to help you find the tasks that should be delegated. You don't have to do that. You can start with what you've got and you'll use that in what we're about to come up for. Look for things you are doing but don't need to. So that might be the laundry, okay? Find the time each week so you can work on the business. So a client this morning I've got, so I meet with him every week. He's on a growth path. That's why he started working with me. So in the last 9 months, we've doubled the size of his business, doubled the revenue, and more than doubled the profits in his business. What he's most happy about is that he just paid his $40,000 tax bill and had the money in the bank. So, you know, but that's because, and our discussion this morning was, because it's so hard to find workers at the moment, he's had people come and go. You know, are you committed to growing the business? You must find the time, otherwise it's pointless us spending so much like meeting every week if he can't do the things he needs to do. So this is the CEO stuff. And it mightn't be about growing the business. It might be about making it more efficient. It might be about, how do I provide better care? How do I provide better post-appointment service? You know, it's that thinking time to make it better and better. Delegation is about letting go. This is a really interesting one, because probably the biggest issue I come up with as organizations grow is people not wanting to let go of what they do. Now, I use examples from other businesses, and no, I haven't worked with Allied Health, but you might know him. Tony Mowbray was a round-the-world sailor from Belmont, I think he was, Swansea, and he sails down to Antarctica and stuff, takes people down there now. Tony tells, he was in the 88, 98, Sydney Hobart with the people died, horrific. Apologise for looking away. I'm looking at where my screen actually is. And he always talks about the examples might change, but the principles remain the same. And, you know, psychologically, we get stuck in this cognitive tunneling of our own type of business. So looking at how things happen in different organizations, different businesses is really useful, because you spot the principle, you can see the example and spot the principle, and then it's, how do I apply that into my organization? If you just get stuck in your lane, that's what happens. You're stuck in your lane and you don't see the obvious things sometimes. I worked with a tyre guy a few years ago. He'd been in his business for 15 years and he wanted to grow his business. He was a bit over his business and he wanted to make some more money. He had a good business, don't get me wrong. He wanted to make some more money. He didn't want to have to work so hard, but he didn't want his team to have to work hard. And the biggest thing I did with him, so we did the smart work in the business, but the biggest thing was talking to him about how he thought about the people he worked with. And not that he thought about them badly, it was about how he thought about the work that they would do. We had to work on his thought process of letting go, of, you know, that his job as a leader was to create more leaders. So his task was to do that. And, you know, 12 months later, he wasn't needed in the business on a day-to-day basis, because he'd empowered people, he'd trained them, he'd done all those things to get them working. Really important point from Michael Gerber.
Can I just ask what you mean by as much as it is the team?
So it means,
the first part obviously is, yeah.
Yeah. So people think it's about the team. So it's meaning that you do have to train the team. You do have to teach them to do things. So it's not just about training the team. But you do, so like for this guy, he had an assistant manager in place. So could he step away straight away and delegate? No, he had to give the guy some systems. He had to give him some training. He had to, you know, to help him become a better manager and better leader in the business. So that's what I'm saying. Does that, if I want the team to do something, I've got to show them how to do it. And importantly, in your organization, and this comes all the way back to the purpose, the systems of your business have to fit with your values, your purpose of the business. So you've got to train the team in how you want it done. Is that making sense, Vanessa, or not still?
Oh, yeah, I know. What you're saying is making sense. I just wasn't sure what that meant, as much as it is the team. I just wasn't sure what that.
Yeah. So what most people say the reason they don't delegate, people think it's all about the team can't do the job. And so I've got to train the team. I've got to get the right people. It's like, that's absolutely true. So that's yes, it is about the team, but it's also about you. You have to be prepared to get out of the way and do that. McDonald's, Paul Hanna, an Australian writer who works in this space, talks about McDonald's years ago, that they're actually so systemized, their team wasn't empowered to think. And what they had to do was get the managers to stop, because they'd systemize so the team didn't have to think. The problem was they trained the team not to think. So and if there was an issue, they just go to their managers and go, what do I do? Instead of, they had to then go back and go, well, we've got to train our managers to get our people to think. It's not, they're not dummies, but they can think, and we've got to have the managers stop just giving them answers. We've got to have them, understand, come to us with, here's the problem, here's what I'm thinking of doing about it, and then work out whether that's the right thing to do. So I hope it's not having a go at the team or anything. It's having a go at us as business owners in a way. Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth, he talks about abdication. Typically, what we find is the first role people get rid of is bookkeeping. Nowadays, what we find is people are keeping that in-house because they think they know what they're doing, because accounting software like Xero makes it really, really easy. The actual problem with that is it makes it so easy that it's easy to make mistakes. It's like thinking that all I have to do to fix a broken leg is put plaster of Paris around it. So I've learned how to use plaster of Paris, so now I can fix broken legs. It's like, that's a bit, to me, what software does. Abdication is, thank God you're here, I can hand it over to you and not worry about it. And that is a big mistake. You have to know something about what's going on, and again, make sure they fit. Even people coming in from outside need to fit with the purpose, with the values of your business. They've got to be a good fit, and they have to work towards your systems. Really important. All employees. Train, assist, and measure at the start. When we did the USP, the how do you stand out from the crowd, one of the points I make about that is it's not just about marketing. But if you're Domino's and you've come up with 30 minutes or it's free, then you've got to put processes in place to make sure you can deliver in that way. When you put processes in place, then you can also set standards and you can have measurements in place to make sure it's taking place. So you need to be able to measure how things are going along the way. Key performance indicators, key activity indicators. Performance indicators are not necessarily, so people use KPIs, performance indicators, when they're actually activities. To me, performance as an outcome. We need to move on. 2 business life changes. Realize that you have to surround yourself with people who respect and value your time and behave accordingly. So that's your team, that's your patients. Everyone needs to value your time and behave in a way in accordance with that. You've got to train your patients that your time is valuable as well. I think in some ways we might have lost a little bit of that over the years with various professions around the place. You have to eliminate the need for doing and or delegate those tasks and activities that just cannot and do not match up with the mandated value of your time. So that goes back to our fun skill matrix. If you're continually doing things that a $25 an hour person can do, and you have the capability to be working at $180 an hour, then do that. Or be at the stage where you're willing just to spend the money and buy yourself the time back to have in your life. Next thing, here's a bit of fun. Now, we'll see how we go with this. So here's your job with this. I'm going to give you 1 minute, and what I want you to do is find the number 1, then the number 2, then the number 3, then the number 4, and circle them. Do as many as you can in 1 minute. Away you go. halfway through. Five seconds. Stop. Where did we get up to? Vanessa, how many did you get?
17.
17, great stuff. If you can put in the chat how many you got, that'd be much appreciated. Sorry, Rachel, I didn't see your chat earlier. I didn't have it. 15 for you, Emma. 18, Rachel, thank you. One small room, delegate to the 12-year-old. I think that's a fantastic idea, delegate to the 12-year-old. Awesome. So here's the next thing. You've got another page with those numbers on it. I want you to go along the top row in between 61 and 14 and draw a line in between them straight down the page. So on the second page of those numbers, in between 61 and 14, draw a line straight down the page. And then where's the middle of the others? 1, 2, 3, 4. We want to do that going across wherever the middle is as well. I'm having trouble looking at it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's between the 63 and the 41 on the left-hand side. Draw a line straight across the page. So now you've got 4 quadrants. Now I'm going to get you to do this same exercise, but I'm going to tell you something. The first number is in the top left-hand quadrant. The second number is in the top right-hand quadrant. The third number is in the bottom left-hand quadrant. The fourth number is in the bottom right-hand quadrant. And that repeats over and over again. So you go left, right, bottom right, top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right. You've got 60 seconds to find as many as you can, knowing that that's the way you find them. Ten seconds. Done. How many did you get this time? Type it in the chat for me, be great. 28, Rachel. So that's 10 increase. Emma, 34 from 15. Wow, you've done really well. Awesome. Vanessa, 28. Cool. Well done, guys. So expect you to do a little bit better because you've already done it once. But, you know, the point here is putting a system in place. That's what this is all about. And we talk about this idea, systemize the routine and humanize the exception. Where systems break down, where you see people talk about policy, it's because they're not humanizing, sorry for the American spelling, humanizing the exceptions. They've got the system, they've got the policies and the procedures, but they're not taking note of the exception at the time. And that's the 80-20 rule comes through in everything. You know, there's 20% of the time makes 80% of the difference in everything that you do. So what we want to do, our point tonight, is to do this, which you also have here, which is to systemize your time. So you will find, I can't imagine a health professional that doesn't have some form of default diary in place. The default diary is simply like being at school, your school timetable. You know, roll call in the morning, then maths, then English, then science, then the stuff that doesn't matter, and then you come back and do maths and English and science again the next day. You know, it's when do those things take place? So the default diary is about systemizing, about putting in place all those tasks that you've listed before. When are they going to take place? So at the moment, you would already have there, I see patients between these times. I have patients at, you know, maybe it's 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, whatever it happens to be. You've already got the times when you'll see patients. So in your default diary, if you're the health professional, that's what goes in there. We're filling it up. But then what we need to do, so what we do is fill it up with what we're operationally, professionally good at, our trade, our profession, okay? And we leave out the rest of the stuff. The biggest thing people leave out is that in the zone time. When are you stopping and thinking about your business, your practice, your life? When are you stop and thinking about that and making some plans to move forward? Now, I said before about the distracted time. Now, I personally think that you need some distracted time. You know, it's good to switch off sometimes. To watch some brain-numbing TV can be really, really good for you. That's why I watch YouTube. My brain doesn't work for 18 hours a day anymore, flat out. I need to stop and do things. So they go in there. But you also put in there, you know, when's the email time? When is that going to happen? And you stick to it. So many of my clients, it's revolutionized their day and their week simply because they turn their email off and will do 2 to 3 times a day where they'll actually switch it on. So they'll shut the program off, not even have it open, or if it's a web browser like Gmail, like I use, they just don't open it. And they put in, I had a client send me today, is this a good autoresponder? So he now has a permanent autoresponder when you send him an email saying, I check emails twice a day. Anything urgent, do this, but I check emails twice a day. You've got to check that for your organization. So when do emails take place? When does admin take place? When does cleaning take place? When does lunch, that elusive thing that we've heard about that people stop for lunch, when does that take place? You never know, one day it might actually happen. And you fill that out and you go, that's what is referred to as the default diary. So I've got that sitting on my wall and I've got it color coded, and I work in 2 weeks. I have a week A and a week B for what I do, and it's color coded, telling me about what the plan is for what I have done. One of my clients still has, from many years ago, Friday morning is her hairdressing. Every Friday she goes into the hairdresser, and that's sacred time for her, personal time. So that's like 8:30 till whatever it happens to be, 10 o'clock every Friday. And that means she diarizes around that. If something had to happen on that day, that appointment would move to another day. So that's one of the things. We've got all this stuff going on. The operations is what you do as a health professional. Then there's the management of the business. There's the marketing part of the business. You know, we've got to have the balance. Again, it doesn't mean it's equal time, but when are those things being attended to? The most common thing I find in business is that management isn't attended to as part of the normal routine. It's something that happens at night with small businesses. Often in small businesses, so particularly if it's a male-run business, it will often end up being the female partner, like life partner, that ends up actually taking care of the business, running it. So put that together. I can send you an example of that if you want. I'm just looking at time, so I've got to move forward. Here's some thoughts on this. The PDF's available. That'll be put up with the video onto the resource center, so you can get the PDF there. I think that's what's happening, Sandy. Eat that frog, Brian Tracy. So what's the worst thing that you have to do? Do that at the start of the day. The rest of the day gets better. So make sure you do that. A, B, C, D tasks. I classify that as act now. What are the things that have to be done now? B, I call before the rest. C, I say can wait. And the D's are ditch or delegate. They either need to get delegated to someone else to do, or just don't worry about them. One of my clients has a term, calculated neglect. So there's things that should be done, but they're not the most important things. So what he's saying is he's made a choice to neglect them because there are other things to be done. One of the things I put in there is C-grade tasks. They can wait. Things that can wait end up waiting and waiting and waiting. And I believe it's good to have some time where you attend to those C-grade tasks, so they become actually the priority. It just stops the pile from building and building and building. I diarise things personally, like I pay my rates, my electricity, all of those things. I've worked out what the monthly cost will be. So one Monday it'll be, I've got in my diary, which is a digital calendar, pay the rates. The next one it'll say, and it might be $250 electricity. The next Monday, because that's when I do my profit first stuff, the next Monday might say electricity's, you know, $200, whatever it happens to be. So that's all diarised, and it means that I'm up to date, and I get things. My last electricity bill, I don't know why we didn't use so much, but I was $350 ahead, so I could have a break for a month. Stop, less, more, start is the first place you do is you stop doing things. Stop Netflix, stop whatever it happens to be, stop eating rubbish. You know, they're the first places you start. Do less of something, do more of something else. So the first part's about reducing, the next part is about moving you forward. You know, do more of something, more exercise, or start doing exercise. Eating an elephant is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So the thing that gets a lot of people is overwhelmed by it. It's like, just choose one thing and do that. I think it was Jim Rohn who said, you know, do one push-up. If you want to start exercising, just do one push-up. Do that, go from there. Finish today, planning tomorrow. So the most successful people, you know, mentors, people that are up on stage talking, and people that I know actually use lists. I don't care what form it's in, but it's like, at the end of the day, where am I up to? What's going on tomorrow? And that happens, like I said, the planning last week was, where am I up to? What's it look like for next year? We've got to plan tomorrow. We've got to plan the year. We've got to plan the quarter, and then we come down to what's the plan for next week. What are the actions that have to take place? And remind yourself of your purpose and values, because it's all got to fit together. So I'm a great believer, if it does not fit with your purpose and values, it will not work as well as it should. And 3 questions I got from being part of Profit First Mastery the other day, actually. Najma Khan, who's a bookkeeper in Western Australia, and she's also a Profit First Master with me. And Najma uses these 3 questions to start the day. Where am I going? What am I doing? How will it benefit me? To keep her on track. And then at the end of the day, you just ask them again, where did I go? What did I do? How did it benefit me? To check in that you've got things done. Again, if you need to talk to me, you know, for 20 minutes about this stuff, give me a call. And then this, you know, how do you go from chaos to control? There's a plan here. There's the business plan, and then there's also, you know, wind that back down to what's the plan to get the diary in place. So you must take the time to plan. Last question on Slido. Do you have documented plans with goals and targets? Yes or no? So the process of planning is most important. Actually taking the time to think through, to be strategic about it, but just to think through what might be like. Imagine the possibilities. Is it, if you're working too many hours, you know, you've got to imagine, well, what would it be like to work fewer hours? What would I do with that time? Imagine all of those things. Documented plan, yes. At my planning last week, I can't show it to you at the moment, we simply drew up on butcher paper squares and used post-it notes and wrote down the goal, and then we used the post-it notes to write down the action. You know, what are the actions that you have to take to get there? So if it's build a website, I've got to work out my target market, I've got to decide my keywords, those sort of things. It's like, well, we'll put those down and then put them out in order, week by week, so that we get something done. And don't have too many. We've planned 3 major goals to focus on for a quarter at the most. Oh, I didn't send, sorry, that's why I can't see it. No. So number 1 is get the idea of where you want to go. What are the targets? What are the goals? And then work back. If you want to come to one of my planning days, I couldn't invite you to the last one. I'm not allowed to send you out things because I don't know who anyone is, but please just, you know, I'd happily invite you as a guest to one of my planning days. We normally do them in Cessnock or at Lovedale. Come along, my shout, not a problem. I love seeing people do better, but you've got to think of what the goal, what the target is. Client I was working with today, his thing is a certain amount of money in cash that he wants to put away, and that's, you know, first he's pay off an old tax debt, and then it's to buy a house, because that's the personal thing, put the family into a house. Really important. Build the plan, work the plan. That's what coaching is actually all about. We build the plan and we work the plan. Plan needs to be an action plan. What are the things you're actually doing? What are the activities that are being carried out to get you there? That's what we've got to make happen. based on what to do, not just the theory. We should do this, and it'd be nice if we do that. What's the action plan? Dream, goal, plan, action. Good plan's simple. Build it on paper first. Don't do much on computers. If you can't build it on paper like systems, if you can't build it on paper, it won't work on a computer. Great believer in that. Invest time to think, develop, and write the plan. That's the big stuff. Take the time. Your default diary should have that put in. Your 90-day should have that. So again, my clients, a day every 90 days out of their business to just stop and think. And that what they understand is that'll make them more money and give them more time back, get them doing what they want to do and better serving their clients, customers, patients than just going to work for another day. A bit like going to, often doing professional development. So, look how. From today, it's like, what are your 3 lessons? What are the BFOs, blinding flashes of the obvious, the aha moments? And then, so what 3 actions are you going to take? That's what you've got to answer for yourself. And love some feedback from you. If there's questions about anything from this or throughout the course, you can ask me now. I'm sure Sandy wants to duck off, but it's only YouTube waiting for me. Grandkids have gone home, so anything anyone wants to ask me about what we've talked about tonight, please do so now. And again, welcome to email Casey for, that's what comes up next. Email Casey for downloads. I've got the 9 steps to an ideal week. If you want a sample of a default diary, like tell me what you want to help you. And if I can, I've got stacks of stuff. If I've got it there, I'll send it to you, not a problem. If you want to spend some time with me, just give me a call. I'm not going to sell you anything. I'm just going to help you. So any questions?
Marcus, probably the thing I'd be interested in most is just like a system for the emails, like, having, if a certain email comes in, like, so developing a system for dealing with emails, because that can get pretty overwhelming. So
when you say that, Vanessa, do you mean like a...
setting up rules for emails?
Yeah.
Or
rules are great.
Yeah, I do some of that, but probably not the best at that. So that probably would be something I'd be interested in.
So I don't know that I have anything specifically about that, particularly, it's probably very specific to your practice yourself. I'd say set them up. And the other thing would be train people with having the autoresponder that says, I look at emails twice a day.
Yeah.
I've never come across anyone that has a problem with that, and it actually informs them, because we're so used to the instant message nowadays. I've sent the email and they haven't responded to me. No, because we're doing other things. That works really, really well. And then you train people on, they get used to that happening, and then set up rules to put things into different folders. Do you use a bunch of different folders? Do you use Outlook or?
Yeah. I've got so many folders. Yeah. But it made me think a bit more about whether, like you said, having I employ an admin person, whether I actually have her going into my emails, because there's another person. Wow, a live real person. Like she could. I mean, there's things that come in, like people, if someone cancels an appointment, I get an email. If someone wants to refer to us, I get an email. So there's things like she could be dealing with that.
And what you tend to find is that,
and I'll just add to that. That probably grew out of me working for myself with no admin support.
Yeah.
So I was info at, where really I shouldn't be info at. I should be Vanessa at.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. I like, and you can do things like, you can do it in Outlook as well. So in my Gmail, on a lot of my documents, I'll put success at Marcus Croak. That still comes to me. It's just a different title, but I can put a filter around that puts it off into a folder because it's directed at success at Marcus Croak. Casey also, she runs my events, so she has events at Marcus Croak. So that, that goes off to her in a different way. But so she doesn't regularly hop into my email, But if I want her to, she's got the passwords. I just make sure I don't say bad things about her when I'm emailing people in case she searches for them. So what you find is that if you actually take the time to analyze your emails, you'll find that, you know, maybe there's 20 things that occur all the time, and you can set up systems and practices so somebody else can handle it.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. Just if I get a referral inquiry, I just have a rule that goes, boop, send it to Claire.
Yeah. So that's the, you know, when the time mastery sits down the bottom, like getting control of that is, that first part is what can you stop doing or do less of? That's a slow down, and let's systemize part of that to get you going. I mean, the other systems that I tend to put in place a lot of the time, particularly to get teams used to it, but they do work, are things like how do you answer the phone, and what is there an actual inquiry script that
I have worked, I have sort of talked about some scripts, and we've worked on a script for someone cancelling on the day. And we've talked about saying, well, in order to avoid the cancellation fee, I want to help you to avoid that. So let's see if we can rebook you. Yeah.
So you would, so again, you'd have, you know, somebody, if they're calling to make an inquiry, somebody calling to making a cancellation, you can go through all of those and develop. They don't have to be anything fancy. It's just, this is the part of training the team, developing them to take control of it so that they can do it. But and the script's not meant to be like a telemarketing robot.
Oh, no.
You know, it's to give them, here's the agenda and outcome we want. In some of my scripts, things like if you rang me, I'd say, you know, just so you can help, but just so I can help you best, would it be okay if I asked you a few questions?
Yeah.
But often that.
We actually have something like that too. Like rather than, like, some people will just say, "What's your fee?" And we've got a script around. You don't answer that question. You go, "What is it that you're looking for?"
I understand that people want to go, but if it's all right, Sandy. So this is my inquiry form from when I had my tuition business. So you can see down here, it's got their details. Then we have, just so I can help you best, is it okay if I ask you a couple of questions? Has someone recommended us to you? So I never ask, I won't say, oh, did you find me on Google? I ask that because if somebody's said, I mean, this is sales and marketing, but we're really saying develop a system and train people in the system. I ask that because if somebody's recommended me, then I can go, oh, we develop an instant relationship. Talking to you. What's prompted your call today? You know, it'd be nice to know why you're coming. Like, and that's not that for you. It's not, I've got some speech therapy that I need taken care of. But why now? Like, what's come about?
Those three questions would still apply.
Absolutely, they apply. So I use this with all my clients, and it doesn't change the first three questions. And then what are the biggest challenges, you know, is leading into these things down here. It just prompts about what's going on to ask them about. But anyway, so that's a simple system. I've got the simple one on the phone of the smiley face, and it doesn't have it on there. The opening thing is, you know, good morning, Vanessa's practice. This is Marcus. You know, so that script sits on the phone. So that's the very, very first system, is everyone then answers the phone the same way. Good morning. This is, you know, the name of the organization, the business. Pause. This is so-and-so. Because we find we get a better response when we do that. So little things, how to open the office, how to close the office. I wrote, again, from the tuition business, it was at Delegated. Can I ask, are you, Vanessa, are you local?
Well, I do some telehealth at home, but I have an office in Erina, and I also work out of a neurologist office in Tumbiumbi.
Yeah, gotcha. So I had this tuition business at Lakehaven, up at the shopping centre, in the offices surrounding it. But when I started coaching, I wasn't there. So I actually had, I think it was 4 or 5 people, different people closed. So I had a system for them to close down, because it was, you know, shut down the computer, turn off the photocopier, turn off the lights, put the code in for the security, all that stuff had to take place. I mean, again, it's a simple system to get them used to systems. And then people know what's going on. But it also meant, because I wasn't there, I had to give them the power, empower them to go, you're allowed to make decisions. So Anyway,
thanks. I'm sure you want to go, Sandy. So yeah.
I'm just Emma, did you have a question you wanted to ask? You came back on the screen.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of backtrack, not just so much on today's topic, but back to sort of cash flow and forecasting. I'm not really someone who's wired for numbers. So the more numbers there are on a sheet, the more lost I get. So the more it's broken down. So I just didn't know whether there was a simpler process for people who are like myself, find those things.
Can I ask you what you do?
I'm a physiotherapist.
You can't tell me a physiotherapist can't do numbers. You didn't get that, whatever it is now, ATAR, but because you couldn't add up. I understand. Look, the simplest way that I use to get cash flows is actually to use your bank transactions. Do you just use one bank account for everything?
Yeah, for sales expenses, yes.
Yeah, so the money comes into one account and you pay your bills out of that account. So it's very easy to download the transactions into an Excel sheet. Yeah. And then I can send you like if you maybe email me directly, say, can I have the cash flow spreadsheet? Because and I think we put it out before, there's the it's not really a break-even spreadsheet, it's an expense spreadsheet where you do your personal and the business and you go through your transactions. If you're good at Excel, you can do it, but otherwise you just lift them out. That'll tell you the amount you need each month for that so that you know what that is. I've got a 12-minute video on it as well. The other simplest thing why I joined Profit First was Profit First just runs things from your bank accounts. Are you aware of Profit First or Barefoot Investor or no?
I've only read the Barefoot Investor a few years ago, but no, I would say no.
So the basic concept around them is that money comes in and you divide it out into the various parts of your life or your business. So money comes into your income account, and then you have this nice thing called a profit account because you run a business that's meant to make a profit. So you put money in that. You have an expense account. Do you have any subcontractors or anything in your business? No. So you just have, what you do is you basically have a tax account. So you put some money in tax, you work out how much, we can estimate that, how much needs to go into the tax account. So when the BAS comes around, you might already have a GST account, but you do that with your tax as well. So it's just sitting there ready to pay. That's how my guy was able to pay the $40,000, because now we're just, as money comes in, we siphon some off to profit, we siphon some off to the tax, and the expense is the last place that it goes. But we're not robbing any of those things. What that does for you is then you can truly look at your bank accounts and do some simple calculations to find out how am I going, because it will show you. It's if I've got my money come in and I've put it in different envelopes and there's not enough money in the envelope to pay the bills, then I know something's going wrong. But if I've got money left over, I know something's going right, and I can now put that, into my bank account that I'm saving money for. Very terrible explanation probably at the moment. Back to your original question, I can send you some stuff to do easier cash flows. Accounting software makes it hard, because accounting is based on, the accounting we do for businesses, the majority of it is based on you paying GST and paying income tax, and that's what they're set up for. So your profit and loss is taxable income, tax deductible expenses, but it doesn't show the things that aren't tax deductible that money's going out for. If you've got a car through the business, typically the payment for that's not tax deductible, but it's still money going out. So you're looking at your account going, hang on, it tells me I've made $100,000, I've got no cash. Well, you've paid for the car, you've taken some drawings, you've paid some tax, all this money going out that's not tax deductible. So again, we take it away from that and come back to a pure cash basis, which is what money's come in, what money's come out. That's what we logically want to think about. Profit First is based around simple psychology and behaviors. It doesn't try and change us. It tries to use how we do things. So I highly suggest, I can send you the five core chapters of that. But just email me, because I'll have to give you. I don't know. You might be able to go to my website and grab it as well. Just Marcus Crook. I'm not sure where it's on there, but otherwise send me your email and I'll just send it to you, the 5 core chapters. Look, book in 20 minutes and I'll make more sense. We do need to let Vanessa, Sandy go. Really, book in 20 minutes. Where are you located?
In Tamworth.
Oh, Tamworth? Okay, cool. Yeah, just...
So Emma, we will have Marcus's details up on the website on our education library, so you'll have those, so you will be able to use his contact details to contact him. And I've
really, guys, it's perfectly okay to book in 20 minutes with me to have a chat about things. Rachel, you can do the same thing. There's only one Marcus Croak. There's actually, I think, another one in the world, strangely enough, but there's only one in Australia. So I'm going to stop you saying things. I'm numerically dyslexic and maths is hard and numbers are hard. And I certainly, if you have children, don't want you passing that idea on to them, because then they go, oh, mum or dad said maths is hard. It's like, so it's okay for maths to be hard. Maths is just a language, just like physiotherapy. You have to learn about tendons and all that sort of stuff. So book in some time, and I'll send you some stuff, and I do have some videos on it. You can just watch those as well. It won't be hard. And the 5 core chapters are profit first, and then you might decide that you want to read the whole thing to make more sense of it. It's just like nutrition. The example that's used in there is like nutrition. Now it won't be in my head. Like eat the veggies first. Have a rhythm to your nutrition, things like that. Get rid of temptation. So very straightforward. I promise you it makes sense, and you won't believe the money that you have without even changing the money that you have when you put that simple practice in place. Start with home. Like it all starts at home. Like I said, when the rates, the electricity, the water, the whatever, break them up so that you're paying a little bit each week or when you get paid, and part of that's if it's your practice that you pay yourself on a regular basis. You don't just take money. But we can make it simple. I'm going to stop raving on. Sorry, Emma.
And Emma, also
when I coached Julie Goodwin, we had a conference for their business one weekend, and she gave everybody Mr. Men books to describe them, and the one I got was Mr. Chatterbox. So.
Well, thank you so much, Marcus. We really enjoyed your presentation today, and I wanted to thank everyone else for being so interactive with the polls as well. That was really good. Emma and everyone else, if you do have other follow-up questions, there is in the chat, I've put a link to a form that we've created that you can send through your questions. Marcus has already done videos of his answers to some of those, which have been fantastic. So we can do that as well. When we get those questions, Marcus will answer in a video, and then we'll email them out to you. And then, of course, don't forget that the recording of this and the slides will be up on the Education Library. Finally, just a reminder to please do the evaluation survey so we can send you out your certificates of attendance. And finally, for me to just say thank you very much to all of you for participating, and thank you very much, Marcus, for a fantastic 5 sessions of information. It's been awesome.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Sandy and Charles and Joanne, who's not here, and everybody who's attended. It's been a real pleasure to be here for you guys. That's what I do, is just help people live better lives. So, and make sure you pass it on.
Awesome.